All right. Gaza War Day 230. John's back.
Hi,
John Ilmer.
Justin.
Hi, John. So we caught your day 229 live stream. They
Ex
extended they extended you to an hour. That's good.
yeah, two
So
weeks in a row. Actually, if you put them together, it's like more than 3 hours for the two. So
wow. Well, what can you do? That's you didn't cover it all still.
no,
There's so much coming out, and that's we'll cover some of that today. I wanted we both wanted to kind of have a special focus on the Battle of Jenin, which I guess translated is the Battle of the Walls of Death. Now that it's over, it's been named by the resistance in Jenin as the Battle of the Walls of Death. So we'll focus on that, but let's start with Gaza. There was one today, which I'm sure you'll be breaking down next week. There's a phrase that we get coming out of the resistance videos, which is complex operation. I think when you read a field report of a complex operation, you know that this is a big deal. So there were explosive devices and then snipers, and I don't know, John, did it look to you like the one bullet went through two Israeli soldiers?
oh, it definitely did. That's
Yeah.
definitely what happened. And the interesting part about it is that Qassam released that sniper video the day before,
Uh-huh.
just on its own. Yeah, it's absolutely an Al Ghul sniper attack with a single bullet going through two soldiers.
Wow.
And then a third soldier gets hit. You can hear the fighters say reload, and he reloads his Al Ghul and hits the third
Because
soldier.
they didn't even move. I didn't understand
They
what
do
was
the
going on there.
weirdest things. Like few of them ran away, which just
Yeah.
looks embarrassing. And then a couple of them stood
Stood
around, which is
over.
almost more embarrassing. It's like, I
Yeah,
don't
he
know.
was standing over them. And I didn't understand that it was the same. I kept looking at the surroundings and being like, is this the same location? And then I thought, if it's the same location, why didn't they move? And I
Well, so
couldn't,
then they released the video today about the
yeah,
complex ambush, and the
yeah.
sniping was part of the complex ambush. So the ambush, it first of all, it's in Beit Hanun, the first area that the Israelis invaded, and the first place they said they had operational control. They go back and they're instantly, because they only were in Beit Hanun for that day. They hadn't been there the day before, 3 days before, a
Oh,
week before. They had just arrived for an operation in Beit Hanun. And so you can see in the video the arms, the like armor roll in. You can see the tanks and the D9 bulldozers. But then you see what we really never see, which is dismounted IDF infantry getting out of their tanks, the infantry unit getting out of their tanks and exploring what they come in with their flashlights and explore what looks like some sort of a tent site. It's not really clear what
hmm.
we're looking at. Yeah, right in the
So this
north.
is Beit Hanun. It
Yeah, so
says
it's
Beit
north.
Hanun.
Yeah.
So
So
it's right. Yeah. It's the buffer zone,
it's the
basically.
buffer zone, and it was north. They indicated that it was north of Beit Hanun, so there's not even that much north of Beit Hanun. So they walked into the buffer zone. And then they walked into this ambush. They set off the first IED against the dismounted foot patrol, and
Right.
then they hit like they did in Khan Yunis. They predicted the route that the reinforcements would come
Yeah.
from, and then they hit the reinforcements in their armor with a Shawav explosively formed penetrator, the most devastating weapon in the Qassam arsenal, and then engaged in a 6 hour firefight where the force withdrew and only left that one unit behind to basically clean up the body parts of the ambush. And that's when the sniper attack happened 6 hours later after the ambush. So we and then you can see that in the field reports, and like we are very heavy on the videos because
Hmm.
it's hard to verify the field reports. The field reports have always been very pretty honest, like they
Hmm.
definitely have a potential kill rate that's a little bit higher than might be true, just in the sense that they don't always know who's dead and who's wounded. But the IDF admitted today that the Beit Hanun snipers that the sniper killed two and severely injured the third. So the guy who got it through, one guy goes right through his body and into the next guy. And presumably that's the guy who's severely injured. But that's the nature of the weapon. It's a
Yeah.
50 caliber anti-material weapon that's designed to be shot at the engine block of an armored vehicle to stop it. Um, and Qassam is, they just continually demonstrate their skill with this weapon because they're not just firing it over their heads. Um, there was half a dozen, I had half a dozen sniper ops in Wednesday's show.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
So
had two that I didn't include in the show because I gave Qassam a deadline. I can't just chase their videos right up
no,
till the
what can you
moment the
do? I
shows
know.
start. So I made a Qassam deadline. And then actually I extended the deadline because did you
Like any
see the,
good. Yeah.
yeah, did you see the one in Rafah where the guy came up from the tunnel? The
Yeah.
two guys come up from a tunnel.
I saw that.
One guy with a helmet cam or with a head cam, body cam, and
Yeah, that
he
was the one with the
runs.
machine guns, right? You were saying that you don't
No,
see
he
that or
runs
something.
the ones where he runs up with the Shawad
Oh,
EFP
to
and
the perfect
places it
distance.
behind,
Yeah.
yeah, perfect distance behind the back door, and
Yeah.
then turns and runs back to the tunnel and basically dives into the tunnel.
Hmm.
It's just, and I was like, okay, that's
How
does
is
there's
the,
no
yeah.
deadline for that one.
If it's not humanly
Yeah,
possible, you probably
yeah,
should include
you
it.
got to include it.
Um, so I'm on OpenStreetMap and I noticed OpenStreetMap, OpenStreetMap has the stuff in the languages. So, if you don't read Arabic, you don't know the names. But what's interesting is, and I don't read Hebrew, but the Netzarim corridor, I noticed they have Hebrew writing here.
Mm.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, I said
So,
that on one of the shows that I said I was going to call it the Netzarim corridor for the rest of this war
yeah,
because it's an Israeli imposition. So we're not going to use the
yeah,
Palestinian term, which is street number 10,
yeah.
roughly.
Like the
Um,
street is just all it's Hebrew letters, and then this presumably says Netzarim corridor. I don't know, but
and they've got a base there, and then the dock is out there, the
that's
American
that
pier.
must be the pier.
And then one
Um,
of the videos that didn't make the cut was a clear sniper hit with an Al Ghul in the Netzarim corridor, southeast of Gaza City. So we were talking about the pier basically at that point.
right.
And there hasn't been any pier deliveries since Saturday, unless there was one today. I didn't see today, but
Yeah, and
there.
they don't know who to give the material to. So
Well, that's
they've
what they're saying. I think that's the propaganda line because I don't think that they've never asked where the how many of the trucks make it to the destination that they're supposed to make it to. But all of a sudden, when they're talking about the American pier, they're saying,
Mhm.
oh, the UN warehouses didn't get the delivery. But there's many systems for distributing aid in Gaza. That's not the only one. There's lots of reasons why the 26 trucks, would have made it to different parts of Gaza or to different groups. So I think that that's actually a propaganda line to say that the stuff didn't arrive because we don't do that with the rest of the trucks. Every day we don't say there was 173 trucks and 149 of them made it to the UN warehouses. They've never done that calculus before until
Just
the
once the truck is in, the truck is in.
that's how they've done it before. But now somehow with this pier, they've managed to offload the sort of pardon the pun, but offload the responsibility onto what's going on shore, which is not relevant to the American project. The American project said it was bringing 90 initially 90 trucks a day up to 150 trucks a day once it fully got loaded or fully in its full capacity, it can do 150 trucks a day, still a ridiculous fraction of what the land crossings can do. But
Tarek told me
instead, what
there's
they,
3,000 trucks waiting at Rafah right now, or something. 6 kilometers of trucks or something waiting.
I mean,
He said you
that's
can't.
only at the border because there's in Arish, there's
Yeah,
trucks in Arish. Yeah, Arish is the biggest town in the Sinai. And so it's not even clear because not all the trucks are sitting and waiting in line. But yeah, there's been thousands of trucks for months and months now. And the Israelis themselves admit that they can process 50 trucks an hour at any single crossing. And there are 7 crossings into Gaza. So do the math just really quickly. And you see that one normal day is like quadruple the best day the pier can do. But the pier's not doing that. The pier did 10 trucks the first day, 16 trucks the second day, and then none again.
And some weapons, people think.
Yeah, there are weapons there. There's a counter rocket artillery and mortar system, like a self-contained system, and then there looked like also there was an electronic warfare truck which would jam signals for like incoming drones. So yeah, those are the things: rockets, artillery, mortars,
The leader of
drones.
Ansarallah, Malik Houthi, he gave a speech today, I think.
I saw that.
And did you hear what he said about the pier?
No.
He said the pier is a military base. He basically didn't use the exact words, but he said it's a legitimate target. He more or less said that. He said the Americans, by transferring weapons, they made it a legitimate target. And he said his analysis, which is that the point of this pier is to make Gaza a prison with only one entry and exit that the Americans control.
Yeah, that's
So
always the fear.
so it's not exactly like the ethnic cleansing pier. It's not the um what do you call it? It's not the gas control pier, but he thinks it's basically like they're they're gonna trickle, they're gonna close everything else, and then they'll turn that as the dial to make Gaza starve
Yeah.
on their schedule.
I mean, I think it makes, like, not to stump for the Pentagon, but I think having a counter rocket artillery and mortar system on the dock isn't that crazy an idea, especially when the people you're asking to defend are the people getting sniped on these videos. Like there's a sniper video from 2 days ago in the Netzarim corridor,
Yeah.
southwest of Gaza City, that drops the soldier that is overlooking the pier. So maybe they're waiting for his call. Maybe on the ship they're waiting for the call from that guy, and they haven't heard
And he
back
just died.
because
I think I read a report of that, and there was also operations in Deir el-Balah. So it's central Gaza's
yeah,
on
so
fire.
they
Yeah.
moved into Darabala today, and then basically besieged the hospital, which is one of the most important hospitals in Gaza that was a functioning hospital, and attacking the middle camps. They're attacking Jabalia, they're attacking Beit Hanun, they're attacking Rafah, they're in the Netzarim corridor, and this looks like the way we're going. I think that there was some kind of idea in our head that we were maybe building towards some kind of, things were coming to a head, that there were, but that's not what Israel's doing. Israel's just gone back and redone all the operations that they said that they had already done. They said they already took operational control over Jabalia. They massacred civilians in a stunning way, even comparative to this war. It was a brutal operation in Jabalia in November and December and October as well during the air war. And they said it was done, right? They're finished with the North. And then they go back into Jabalia, and we start hearing from the defense minister and the chief of staff that they're operating in areas in Jabalia that they never operated in before. He says we're operating in new areas that we haven't operated before. So obviously, that first part was just propaganda, as we reported at the time. But it really is opening up this idea that the Israelis aren't going to end. There isn't going to be an end to this war. They don't care about their people, right? They don't even care about their base commanders. That Qassam released a video today of one
Us,
of the,
yeah, Colonel Asaf Hamami, commander of
yeah,
the Southern Brigade of Gaza Division, and they basically, whenever they make a video like this that ends with a giant question mark on the screen, the next day they usually say this guy's dead. So
Well, the Israelis think he's dead. They had a funeral for him in December, and Yoav Gallant was there, and thousands of people were there at his funeral. But they haven't told us. There's three base commander. There's the base commander for the Gaza division, and then there's two brigade commanders, the Southern Gaza Brigade commander and the Northern Gaza Brigade commander that um, Ronan Bergman said all three of them were on the base that day. And that was one of the mistakes militarily, like in military practice, that all three of them should never have been on the same base at the same time. But they all were at Riyam on October 7th. Um, but their names, uh, yeah, they've just kind of disappeared from discussion. But yeah,
Yeah.
these invades they reinvaded Zaytun in Gaza City for the third time. So there's just
You mean
obviously no
you mean
plan.
since they withdrew from Zaytun?
Well, they withdrew just the other day from Zaytun from their third operation there. There was an
Okay.
operation in February, and then in December they said they cleared Zaytun. In early December, they said they cleared it.
Yeah. So
And
yeah,
each of
they're
these
just
places, they're getting hit harder
yeah.
than before, right? So when you're saying like, is the resistance worn down or degraded by these Israeli operations? If you're just looking at like quantifiable, there was more than 100 operations in Zaytun. For the third invasion of Zaytun, they mounted 100 operations in like 6 days. So
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the question is the is resistance exhausted? I think the question is how are the Israelis continually coming up with
yeah,
troops to throw at this problem, manpower to throw at this problem because they're they're just it's like waves crashing on a rock wall or something, right? I mean, they go, they get hit, they come out. They produced, so we're watching these videos of these sniper operations. Israel's producing videos, photos of soldiers reading in a library they're burning. You probably saw that
yeah, I
one.
saw that.
We saw another one, maybe just firing a machine gun just into the distance. Another one of those machine gun, emptying your machine gun into the distance.
Yeah.
So they've got those to show. The ICJ might order a stop to the war tomorrow, apparently.
Oh yeah, I didn't hear that. Is that
Yeah.
something that they can do?
Well, yeah, they can order it.
They can order it.
I mean, they weren't gonna, but like the provi so I think South Africa said we need additional provisional measures. That happened a couple days ago. And Israel said, no, you don't, because everything we're doing is fine. And then the Israelis said, no matter what they order, we're going to continue, obviously. The ICC with the warrants, you guys discussed that yesterday at the live stream. Um, and the ICJ, yeah, might order a stop to the war tomorrow. That doesn't, obviously Israel's going to ignore it if that's what they order, but it's another nail in the coffin of the legality of any of this, such as it is.
Yeah,
If you're that kind of person, which we're not, but
I'm not. It makes my eyes cross.
but but other people are, and I guess that matters. Before I like completely, every time I'm ready to completely blow it off, you kind of realize that like all these politicians, all of these armies work within a framework of the law, right? They're all following some set of rules. If nobody follows the law, you can't have a state, you can't have an occupation, you can't have any of this stuff, which I guess, is prescriptive in some cases, but the point is, nobody can just blow off the legal question, I suppose, even though
Well, it
we're,
sticks to them. It sticks to
yeah.
them, and these things are, yeah. I just because it makes my eyes cross doesn't mean I don't think that they should do it. But
Well, there one other point about the Israelis. I've been on this guy Alon Mizrahi's Twitter feed for months now. I find him pretty insightful. And here's one that I thought was interesting. He says, I think that many IDF soldiers are actually losing their mind in a very clinical and not just political way. Not that the two are ever separate. There's no recognition of wrongdoing or right from wrong. The depersonalization may never be reversed. Israel pushes its young people to actual insanity.
yeah,
And I think that that's, I mean, if,
Those articles are happening in their papers. Haaretz, even Jerusalem Post is writing about the like the PTSD factor. They're all scared.
yeah,
They don't, they call their country beleaguered in the letters to the editor, even in like a right wing. And the Jerusalem Post has gone particularly right wing in the last few years. They were always right wing. Well, had
yeah,
been for a couple decades, but even in their
centuries.
letters to the editor, the people are talking about, having strokes from fear, their
Yeah.
beleaguered nation, the horrors that, you know,
Well,
people not going back home.
Mizrahi had another tweet that I thought was really profound the other day, where I can't even remember if I talked about it in the sit rep or not, but he said something like collective trauma is always fake. So like you can have an experience and it's a trauma and but you'll get over it. But like the way that the Israeli media re-traumatizes people continuously. So he's like, unless you have a media system and a propaganda system that's continually reminding you and lying in the case of October 7th, you can't really have this constant re-traumatization. And he used the example of 9/11 too. And I thought it was very interesting because it's like you think of Israelis and they're just that's what's happening to them. They're just constantly being re-traumatized by what they're shown on the media and by what's being hidden from them. Like
Yeah, what's being hidden from them for
when they're
sure.
actually being massacred in these battles, that's Israelis don't know that. And
No.
there's this huge gap between like the lies they're told, their heads are being filled with false information and they're remaining blissfully empty of real information.
So what do you think would happen? What do you think if the death toll came out every day and was honest, um, and the death toll came out with, 50 or 75 plus wounded a day, 10 or 15 killed a day. Um, do you think that that would stop? I mean, it's obviously what the Israeli military and government believe. They believe that if the death toll is known, the morale will drop and they'll want to quit the war, which is what happened in South Lebanon. It's what
Yeah.
happened in the 2006 war, South Lebanon in 2000, I mean, like in the occupation years. Um, it happened in 2006 when their soldiers got hammered, and there was those CNN cameras on the border that watched the soldiers walk back from Lebanon, looking like they were never going to fight in
Yeah.
another war again. And then this time they've made this really conscious effort to hide the casualties.
Yeah.
And then it's interesting when they do release it, like they released the sniper one, and said who it was, who the sniper kills were. So it's like I guess that's how you lie, right? You tell the truth sometimes enough to keep
Sandwich. Yeah, you
uh,
make a truth
a-
sandwich or something. But yeah, I mean, what do I think would happen? I mean, the psychological breaking point is prior to the physical breaking point. And so I think that what the Israeli elite is doing is saying, we're gonna try to go until our physical breaking point in the hopes that we can reach the Palestinian breaking point first.
yeah. And they seem to be
And
talking about invading Lebanon as well. They still seem to be saying that.
I don't think there's any, I don't think this is gonna, I personally don't think this is gonna end without a war between Lebanon and Israel, between Hezbollah and Israel. I don't see
Well, this is a
how that
thing
can
for
be
your sit
avoided.
reps because you thought your sit reps were temporary.
I did. I
And
did.
then this week, the Israelis said they're going to fight to 2026. And then
Yeah.
if they don't care about their captives, which they obviously don't, then there's no pressure on them. They believe that
Yeah.
their population can be
S- can be what's the
contained.
word? And convinced, right? That the sacrifice was worth it.
Was worth it. Yeah.
And that's why they trotted out that Irish guy who said he wished his daughter died in front of his daughter, that
Oh
Asa
yeah, yeah.
Winstanley from Electronic Intifada wrote about that today on his Substack. Just yeah, just like they're trotting out all these parents and people, families, the kind of like pro kill my children families, basically.
Was the child in that interview?
Yeah, there's one interview where where the child is there. He's like reaching across and holding her hand, and she started looking at the
Yeah,
camera.
she's sort of like, okay, Dad.
I, I saw that picture in Ace's article actually. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Um,
So
okay.
did we skip over Yemen? Because I didn't notice he said something about the pier, but Abdelmalik al-Houthi, um,
Yeah.
something that we've been tracking here on the sit reps, he said that there are up to
Yes.
327,105 trained soldiers. And I
And
remember when he said 100,000 and we talked
yeah.
about it. And I remember when he said 200,000 and we talked
Yeah.
about it.
It's like filling a balloon
It's
and it's
there's a
gonna
lot of
burst.
people that want to fight, and 119 ships targeted, Israeli, US, UK. They downed 2 Reaper drones this week, 60 mil in drones. Um,
Yeah, he said I wish we could get a land corridor to get there. So maybe he'll be asking the Saudis nicely a few times when the numbers reach the right number.
8 operations in the Red Sea, Arabian Sea, Gulf of Aden, and Indian Ocean. 8 ops, 15 missiles and drones. So it's carrying on consistently.
Yeah.
I also
So,
saw that the
so they'd be hard pressed to walk.
it's a
They have a
long
long
walk.
walk from Yemen all the way across Saudi Arabia. Mind you, this is the land route that presumably they're trying to take supplies across this way through Jordan
There's
into
got to be a
Israel.
long, like, Quranic history of walking that route too, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it may happen. It may be another thing. Like this is one of the things he said, I think. Both he and Yahya Sari have been saying some formulation of there are unthinkable things that have happened, and there are things that will happen that are unthinkable today, right?
Is that like his Rumsfeld's known unknowns? It's like
I don't
the
know.
good guys known unknowns.
Yeah, I think so. It's basically like, you would never have imagined. I think so. Maybe I might not have been him, but they were saying something like that. Like you would never have imagined, all these countries recognizing Palestine. You wouldn't have imagined like them chanting for the Palestinians at universities in the West and things that are going to happen are not imaginable from where we sit today.
Yeah. And all
Um,
things that are really, really difficult to see how they resolve.
yeah.
I don't know if you saw the clip from 60 Minutes where Leslie Stahl, the famous 60 Minutes reporter, she went to Metula in
Oh,
northern Israel, and I don't know how they let her in there, but I guess they thought it was 60 Minutes. It was going to be good, but they come under fire right away, and she runs with her crew down into this bunker. And once they're all scared and down in the bunker, it's loose lips, and they're talking. And the settlement security, first of all, the settlement. They're all civilians. It's civilian security. They're all in this what they call the war room, and they're all watching on video what's coming across the border, and it's them that is telling the IDF that there's something happening. And so
no,
she's
I've
like,
been reading.
hold on a sec, we gotta go. And she like scurries off into the room to call the IDF. Like it's one thing to use human shields, but it's another thing to mobilize your population
Yeah,
as adjunct uh
absolutely.
IDF, right? To be actually the anyways, it's just. And then the point that I wanted to say was, at one point they ask the mayor of Metula, who's in this settlement, they say to him, how many people are going to come back? And he says, if there's a negotiated settlement, that
Go up.
40% of people will not come back. So he
Wow.
seems to be implying that if you want more than 40% of people to come back, you have to launch a
To
war,
crush Hezbollah
which is
forever.
which I might say as a military analyst that you might want to do the opposite of that, and that zero people will come back if you fight a war in
I've
that
I've been reading about Metula every day. Every
every day,
single day there's a report of a strike on
every
Metula
day.
from Hezbollah.
Hezbollah has been showing us a lot a lot of different weapons. Did you see the blimp they downed? Like that is absurd that they downed that blimp. The blimp that's built.
That blimp is what, like seven figure, no more, eight,
Oh
like
yeah, it was like a
100
10
million.
million.
Yeah,
It's a something like tens of millions for the blimp itself, and then the radar system that it's connected to is like $1.5 billion, $2 billion, and it's designed for low flying fiberglass drones. It's like
yeah.
air radar that does a better job of than ground radar. And Hezbollah
Yeah,
goes over, flies a drone over it, goes
exactly.
back, and then goes back and attacks it. And then, like you reported when we did the show last time, that I
Yeah,
hadn't seen the video and I got caught up on it.
yeah,
They had a drone that launched missiles at,
yeah.
right? So they're
That
showing
was
us
right
these
after
things.
they downed the blimp. So I think the blimp was probably a problem for their
Oh, it's a
other drone.
problem. That
So they
all of
took,
these attacks on these surveillance and network connectivity posts that Hezbollah has been carrying out, they
yeah,
are all like an aggregate problem for
yeah,
Israel. And as Nasrallah has a
yeah,
funny has said, they're too scared to go and fix them. Right?
yeah,
Nobody. They're too
yeah.
scared to
Well,
go
they
up
have they have hit people fixing them,
and then they've
and
hit people.
they've hit the second version of them. Like
Yeah,
they've been like they'll wait for them to fix it, and then they'll hit that. Like, congratulations. Did you spend all the money on the repairs?
yeah,
Perfect. And then they hit it again.
yeah. And
They hit Safed with a cruise missile. Um, some of the dozen attacks today I read were in response to Israel bombing a school bus. So Israel bombed a school bus in Lebanon. Um, shouldn't be surprising, I guess, after everything we've seen in Gaza. Um, it's the 24th fourth anniversary of Hiam, the prison, the liberation of Hiam prison, which we've reported on here, but I never tire of the story.
yeah,
There was a 12-year-old prisoner liberated that day, a 14-year-old prisoner liberated that day. They're now
wow,
38 and 36, I guess.
12 years old in a
Yeah.
torture prison.
Yeah,
Just for
that
people if they didn't hear when we used to sit rep that the Hiam prison was liberated with the bare hands of the people of Hiam who came up the hill with rocks and sticks and metal poles and literally smashed the locks off the doors so that they could free their family members and their friends who are in this torture prison. It's just like one of the most incredible stories. I'm a sucker for a prison break, but this type of prison break where you're liberated from the outside has just
yeah,
it's like because I think it's all the story. I think a lot of people are intrigued by prison break stories, like how you
yeah,
manage to
absolutely.
get out of the inside of a prison and those stories. But to have your friends out on the other side of the door banging the locks,
Yeah.
it's incredible.
Um, Resistance News Network reported on the 24th anniversary, and they said Hiam teaches us that the liberation of our prisoners is inevitable.
Yeah.
There, maybe we'll give them the last word on that.
And the
Um,
Israelis rearrested a woman in during the Jenin raid who
yeah,
was part of the prisoner exchange in November. So just like really duplicitous behavior from a not demonstrating a country willing to make um, you know to be counted on, to be trusted to do a prisoner exchange when you're rearresting the people that got
yeah,
out and while your people are free. Um, so
absolutely.
I don't know. We tracked it for a long time, thinking like they got to release these people at some point, but it totally looks like there's absolutely no. There's not even like there's not
No, they
not
turned the
even
corner.
winds blowing for that in
I think
the
they turned the corner on it. I think they
yeah, they
turned the
turned the
corner
corner.
on just like the sacrifice
Yeah,
of the Israeli prisoners.
yeah, I think that's true. I think that last ceasefire
Yeah,
um I mean, that last ceasefire where we woke up that Saturday morning and BBC was everyone was telling us that it was minutes away.
yeah,
I mean, that's such a deep psyop.
yeah, yeah. Very, very effective. Iraq, do you know about the Arqab missile? I think I've talked about the Arqab missile.
No.
It's an Iraqi missile, cruise missile
Okay.
of the Iraqi resistance. And they fired two of them, one at Haifa port and one at Eilat. Um, so
They all give these their own names, so it can make it.
yeah,
I mean,
that's
weapons are like that in general. Everybody names their weapons. Every
so
country has a different name for the
for
same
the same
weapon.
weapon, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Arqab upgraded cruise missile. Oh,
So
yeah,
The Iraqi resistance has made some sort of agreement where they don't target the Americans,
yeah.
but they are constantly or regularly at least targeting, attempting to target Israel. And Israel is admitting that they're scrambling fighter jets to shoot these down,
Hmm.
which they weren't
Yeah,
previously saying.
it's the same kind of things that Iran launched on the 14th of April in quantity, and
Yeah,
Iraq just sends one or two
yeah,
a day.
yeah,
So I guess it's sort of taxing to Israel's various defense systems, but
yeah.
makes
Well,
them expend.
they've missed, they have close calls a couple times. They missed that one warship
Yeah.
in a lot. And they put the one missile through that massive Israeli flag
Yes, I saw that. Yeah, I remember that.
at the naval pier.
And now we go to Jenin. So Jenin, we've been watching for the past couple days, and it was a 2 day long, 46-hour battle. You reported yesterday, you were talking about it on the live stream about how they went in with like, I don't know, two battalions, or, I don't know, 1,000 soldiers or something.
That's what they said, 1,000
Yeah.
soldiers to go into a, yeah.
And it was a column of military vehicles you saw going in.
Yeah, a column
Um,
so long the photograph couldn't catch them all. It looked like a military parade,
yeah. Bulldozers destroying various roundabouts. They
killing
had done it.
children riding their bikes, killing a doctor, a surgeon on his way to work, a veteran, 22 years at the hospital,
Yeah.
killed seven fighters and five civilians.
They're
It's
saying
just,
12 total.
yeah,
And
12
then they
total.
withdrew. And then they withdrew, just like they do every other place. They withdrew at the end of it all.
Yeah, and every time
Um,
they destroy the martyrs roundabout at the entrance of the camp, and every single time the day after, the people of Jenin camp rebuild the martyrs monument in the roundabout on the way into Jenin.
yeah, there
It's
were huge, huge funerals today. I saw some fighters like kind of talking to the camera, and they said, if they have any courage, let them acknowledge the losses they suffered in Jenin.
Yeah.
They
Again,
said
they're
it.
not counting their West Bank casualties. We saw that
Yeah,
car bomb hit a bulldozer in Tubas that for sure has casualties.
yeah,
And then, yeah, the resistance in Jenin, the Jenin brigades, Israel Quds, they said that there was multiple IEDs
explosives.
that were effective, and they said that that the IDF actually had to take their injured into the clinic in Jenin. So, but yeah, they just destroyed things. They just killed kids on their bicycles. They stay they terrorize civilians, and 1,000 soldiers can only get seven resistance fighters. It's just like,
And can only stay there
and can
for
only stay
46 hours
briefly.
before they leave. And that there are statements like that where they say, Jenin remains the hornet's nest that of the occupation or whatever.
Hornet's
They
nest of
it's
terror.
impenetrable.
And honestly, Jenin, I think we've said it, but Jenin has been like that for 100 years. I
Yes.
was doing just, you go back in through the old newspapers and you pull a newspaper from 1932 and you'll get the same story. It's always Jenin fighting. It's
Yeah.
like the land of the fighters. And then now, because it's such the land of the fighters, they actually attract the sort of
Hmm.
like people hide out in Jenin. So fighters from other cities work their way to Jenin to be safe in Jenin.
And that's what they said. They said people came from Tubas and Tulkarm and other places to join this battle. And I mean, this pattern of it's like the pattern of this raid. It's just raids now, and that seems to be what the Israelis are moving towards, is just raiding here and there, and
Yeah,
they
well,
are going
yeah.
to try to do that forever, I guess.
Well, that's what it's starting to look like in Gaza. It's starting
Yeah,
to look, and here, when you listen to the things that the Israelis are saying, um, they're not going to occupy Gaza. Gallant said that they would, if to in order to occupy Gaza, they'd need to extend the conscription to 4 years, which is basically a signal to the population that says, like, we're not going to do that, right? It's not
right,
saying, hey, we're gonna add another year. It's a non-starter. They won't do that, and
right.
so they're not going to occupy it. They're not going to defeat Hamas. And so what's the plan? How do you end this war without being declared the loser? You just continue to fight it,
Yeah,
and you treat
just,
it like it's the West Bank, and you take Netzarim corridor, you make a corridor into Jabalia, you make a
yeah,
corridor along the border, what they're doing right now in Rafah.
right.
You drag out, we were talking about Rafah, like, is it going to be a full scale invasion? How is this all going to, when's it going to start? And now
Yeah,
we're seeing that their plan for Rafah, it looks like a six
same
month
thing.
plan, right? 8 month plan. Like they're just going to take their time
Yeah,
with a smaller number of troops. There's five brigades, so there's just more than a division. Whereas a couple weeks ago, they had 3 divisions ready to go in, and now
yeah,
they're not. They're willing to take weeks to go, and they've shut the Rafah crossing down, which is just a total disaster for the Palestinians. Karim Shalom, the main crossing for aid into Gaza, has been effectively closed since that rocket attack before the
hmm,
Israelis invaded. And so those two factors are enormous. And then because the Israelis didn't set up a checkpoint, they set up no checkpoint, and that allowed people in Rafah to feel safe to leave to go to other places. And
yeah,
950,000 people left in 1/3 of the amount of time that it took
yeah.
them to
To
get
get
there.
there.
So they did change the formula, but they did it by moving the field hospital, no longer delivering aid, no longer having a checkpoint set up that the Israelis disgustingly called the drain, where they would arrest
Hmm.
thousands of people and torture them to death in prison camps. Those prison camps are basically full now. All of Israeli
Hmm.
jails are full. So that was when you read about, like, the UN was in and the US were in conversations. They think they're productive conversation. We talked to the Israelis about limiting civilian casualties, and we think it was productive. Um,
Yeah,
the Israelis actually only ordered the formal evacuation by flyer of 150,000 people from Rafah. The 800 plus other thousand that left on their own.
they just left anyway because what's the difference? It's not a safe area.
No, but there's still people, like I've been saying for a while, that Rafah is different. Rafah is more spread out. Rafah is wider. Rafah has the border with Egypt. Rafah has significant population centers on the western edge of the city, Tel Sultan camp, and on the far west side. Those people haven't left yet because the pace of the war, it looks like it will take them months to there at this current force posture. But it's all just because the Israel's delaying, because any move they make would be to lose the war. But they have to make a grand bargain, or whatever they're calling it, like a multi-pronged diplomatic solution to this, where they fix Gaza, where they fix the fight with Hezbollah in the north, where they make the Ansarallah Yemeni armed forces stand down. And that's not going to happen if you carry out a war of attrition. And we reported last time we were together on Abu Ubaida's speech, and they
They
said
said
they're
we're
ready for a
prepared.
war of attrition. That's what guerrillas do, right? So
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The the forever war model seems to be
yeah,
the
I guess it's
the
not
plan
new.
now, and I don't know if that's sustainable. I don't think it is, but I guess if that's the only if that's the only option, they're gonna have to see if they can sustain it. And the Israeli way of thinking, the Israeli mentality is always let's kill a bunch of people and see if anything changes and makes it more favorable to us. And
Yeah,
it's
their
worked for them so
military
far.
plan in Jabalia,
Yeah,
Chief of Staff Halevi said we're going in to kill as many Hamas fighters as we
yeah,
can in order to put pressure on them to hand over our prisoners.
right.
Uh, like that is not going to happen. Even if
Yeah,
there's only two Hamas guys left, they'll be the two guys guarding
yeah.
those soldiers.
It's just it's not it's a misreading of the
Yeah,
situation,
it's a
willful
mis.
misreading of the situation.
I
And
mean, it's
there
a
is
strategic catastrophe reading of the situation. Do you remember the world where the war was going to end? The Americans said they were going to make the Israelis wrap up by like the first week of
mhm.
January.
Yeah, and I mean it's fascinating because the Americans, yeah, I mean the way that they've discarded like it's a recurring theme of everything we've been saying, but it's like they said Rafa is a red line, and now they're just saying, well, actually it's not a red line and we never said that.
Literally, that's literally what they're saying.
Yeah. And and it's just like you I just I don't know how anybody is gonna believe anything they say ever again. Maybe that doesn't matter to them. I don't know, but it seems to me to be a part of exercising power and having power that people believe you when you say things.
Yeah, that's an important part of power, a critical part of power. But that they're doing the opposite of power, right? They're
Yeah,
all of their enemies are emboldened. They
yeah,
can't defeat the besieged enclave that
yeah.
can't get out, can't access the outside world. And they've got all these other enemies who are just watching Hezbollah. Like Hezbollah is more emboldened than they've ever been. Iran is more emboldened than they've ever been.
Have you
Yemen
seen
as a fighting force.
the map Haaretz published of Israel's new border?
No.
Oh, that's a treat to be able to share that with you. Um, they Haaretz published a thing where they said this is our new border now, and it's basically showing the where the Israelis can't go. God, where do I have it? I might have to
Yeah, I think it's the technical number is 5 kilometers off the border in the north, but I think the reality is more like 15.
yeah.
And then in the south, it's the entire envelope. And
Yeah,
then on the
that's
other
not even
side of
how
the
Haaretz didn't even admit that. They're not admitting that the envelope is in
who's going to
question.
go and live in the envelope under this circumstance in 2026? Is Israel saying they're going to fight Hamas until 2026?
Right.
And then what? Then people are going to all go back and live in the envelope after you allowed 150 of your people to slowly die in captivity because you
Or well, not all of them slowly died. Some of them were outright killed
some of
by
them were quickly killed.
so yeah, this is Haaretz, Israel's new northern border.
Yeah.
And it's the
I think
new
that's the 5 kilometer one. You can go deeper.
yeah. Well, yeah, here's 5 kilometers on the map.
Yeah, so I guess it's where you could. So Safed is definitely 15.
Right. Yeah, three of
So
those.
that must be what it is. So it's they're saying it's 10 because that looks like 10 Nahariya on the border looks like.
So this is Highway 89, and they've withdrawn south of Highway 89.
Yeah, and
So,
Israel told the Israeli government told the people, the hoteliers who are hosting all the people from the abandoned communities, that they're going to be doing that through the rest of the year.
yeah.
And school starts in September, so school's not going to go back in September in the north. And that's what this Leslie Stahl 60 Minutes doc was saying, that the settlement mayor was saying they're killing the north. This is the death of the north. She said it's a actually Leslie Stahl said it's a humiliation. They've abandoned it.
Mm. Well, yeah. One last thing, I guess we've been trying to figure out how Israel plans to do this long term. I've been listening to Mearsheimer. Mearsheimer was in Australia. He gave a lecture in Australia that I watched, and then an interview that I watched, and he has a scheme where he goes, there's four possibilities. One is Israel from the river to the sea, one is two-state solution, one is apartheid, and the other one is genocide. And he says these are all apartheid is what we have now. They're moving towards genocide. A two-state solution isn't feasible. And he says a two-state solution isn't feasible because after October 7th, Israelis will never allow an armed Palestinian state to exist. And it's like, it's just such a weird, I didn't like that formulation because it's like, what are Palestinians supposed to accept
Yeah.
after the genocide? Like, is there a,
That's the
after the gen,
realpolitik, though. He
but
gets
what's real? Like, what's real? Real is also what people do and how history unfolds, right? It's only real if America or Israel wants it. Otherwise, it's like fantasies and pipe dreams.
yeah. Well, it is
So,
because he only thinks about power. And so
yeah,
but the idea that the Israelis were ever going to allow an armed Palestinian state, I think that there's extremely thin evidence that that was ever seriously on the table.
sure, but America could have forced them at any time, blah blah
Yeah.
blah. But but it's like what they're going to allow is what's forced on them, no more, no less. So it's not like it's always the circumstances. Malcolm X said this too, right? The circumstances that you're in determine what you're going to allow and what you're not going to allow. I don't think Israel was ever going to allow themselves to lose 10 kilometers of territory in the north. They
Fair
weren't going
point.
to allow themselves to be attacked on October 7th. But here we are.
No, well, Leslie Stahl drives through with 60 Minutes and shows the destroyed houses in the north that are just
Yeah.
have never been seen before. To that the ruins are inside Israel, that
Oh,
the buffer zones are inside Israel. I mean, I remember
yeah.
we started talking about this in December as a
Yeah.
reality. Like these buffer zones don't seem to be going anywhere.
Right. Right. And that was one of their plans, remember, to make a buffer zone inside Gaza and then
Yeah,
never. Yeah.
that doesn't work. They're hit harder in the buffer zone than almost anywhere else, right?
Yeah. They hate the buffer zone. All right. Well, what else we have? On Saturday, Nasrallah is speaking again, so you'll hear from us on Saturday night. Um, until then, it's not very long. But in Gaza war years, it's
Yeah,
probably 5 years. I don't know.
it's brutal. It's
Tomorrow, the
brutal.
ICJ might order the end of the war. There will be more fighting for sure.
My friends send me pictures of their new tent because now they've
Ugh,
set up their new tents. It's just
the pictures that, man.
it's so hot there. It's like we talked about how it was winter and brutal and the rains and now it's just like it's almost unspeakable.
So
And just,
beautiful.
the part of the ceasefire agreement would be that there would be a surge of tents and caravans, right? That would come in. So postponing that just is brutal.
Yeah, it's gonna be a while.
But the resistance is strong, so
Yeah, they're gonna they're gonna pay for every day until until they find their price, I guess. All right, hang in there, everybody. Like and subscribe and comment, and we'll see you in a couple days.
see you guys.